So shall we start the meeting? Now it's 10 o'clock. Welcome to everyone here. And before we start, you'll see that there's a new person who's sitting on the other behind you. This is our new climate change. What's your whole climate change lead is actually just your title. So this is Joe Gentlecourt. Have I said your name right? Very good. So he will be assisting our committee into the future, obviously, with having that role. So welcome him to council. Thank you. It's good to see you for this first meeting. So we'll start with the karakia. Oh, sorry, my alert that I had the meeting coming now has just come up. So we'll start the karakia. We'll say it together. Whakataka ki te tū, whakataka ki te tonga, kia mā kena ki uta, kia mā tātata ki tai, e he aki ana atakurua, he tu, he hika, he hau, te hei maurirong. Okay, so I don't think we've got, I think everyone's here. No apologies. Nope. Anyone got some extraordinary business they want to share with the rest of us? Nope. Conflicts of interest? Nope. Terms of reference, that's just for information only, but does anyone want to bring up anything to do with that? Nope. Confirmation of minutes. I think, Lydia, you might see a change on that. Conflicts of interest, it should be Councillor Glidden as opposed to Councillor Reid. That's just only one. Has anyone else got anything from the last minutes they want to have changed or any comments on the minutes? So
I'm happy to second with the amendment.
very good. I almost forgot that. Yes. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Chairperson's report. This I've only done is a number of things that have happened since probably the last meeting we had in the last year that might be of interest. Not sure if anyone wants to discuss any of the things on it. Couple of things that I just want to highlight is I've been doing the IOD Climate Change Governance Essentials course and just finishing off that, and it has been quite good for me looking through and then thinking about how we are looking at that side of things from a council perspective and other things that we could be looking at. And so, and these are things that they need to talk with Tim and such and Joe about for us going forward with what we're doing with our climate change things that we're doing with our council from the governance perspective, as opposed to looking at what is the staff doing. And so just working through those, and it is for anyone who's looking at doing a course like that, it is really good course, pretty full on and a lot of information. Yep, I see it as directly relating to my role as being chair of the Climate Change Committee. Yep. And there's some updates on different things that have changed with this government on regards to waste and such like that have been put in by the previous government, and of course our reuse store will be at the Pines Recovery Plant will be will be open for business on the 1st of March. So that's quite a good thing for us as well. Are there any questions on my report?
I have a question on that. Has there been an invitation to all of us for the opening?
Yep, there has been. For the
On our calendars.
yep,
See one on my calendar.
It's next Wednesday.
yeah, in the morning. That is for the official opening. Anyway, we can check that later, but the rest of you got the invite? Yep. Oh, yeah, if everyone puts their mics on if we're not using, yeah. That's all right.
Who do you want to go first?
Well, okay, that's all right, you go.
My question was just on the MFE update on waste policies.
Yep.
And wanting to know, were we already, so on that, it said in the report that some of the things that the last government identified as being important to implement in a district, they're now pulling back on and not requiring council, but were some of them things that we were halfway through implementing and it would be good to continue, or are they all at an end now?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly the process that we're along with some of the things. We had talked about this, particularly myself had concerns with the food scraps and it was compulsory for everyone to have that, actually pay for that service, even though they're not using it. I mean, I personally, at home, we compost all our scraps. So that's one of the things that has gone from it. But I'm not sure, you know, it is good for us to check where, because it's Andrew Boyd is the one who does that, who's not
So
involved with this committee. So
I can find that out and bring
Yeah.
it to the next committee meeting in terms of what the waste
Yeah.
waste people are doing, waste team. You could even get them on to write some sort of verbal report if you like.
yes, that would be good, actually.
And and also how that fits into the policies, because it's all about climate change and sustainability as well, right? It all connects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be helpful to understand.
So we can get something on the next agenda.
Yeah.
Andrew Boyd come on.
Thank you, Speaker. Very good. Thank you for those questions.
Well, thanks, Megan, because that was one of my questions on the list, is around the green waste. And I know that in our LTP, we had budgeted and decided, well, legislated to follow through with that from 2027. So it would be great to get a report back from Waste Management team of how that affects that decision.
Yeah.
My other one was, the Climate Partnership Plan by the Canterbury Mayoral Forum.
Yep.
You attended that. Was that invitation only, or was that out to everyone, or do we need to look in the right places to attend those?
I thought that
Because I
was,
would have found it really interesting.
I thought that was everything.
No, it wasn't. I happened to be in a GCP and heard about it. Was that afternoon?
Was that, I wasn't at the December.
Yeah,
Was that
no,
correct?
it must have been when it, yeah, that'll be the day. So I only went, I didn't know about it either. So that was the official release thing, but I was quite surprised. But Elizabeth was there, but you would have found out because you were on that climate change committee, and so was Sophie. So Sophie was there as well.
Thanks.
Right, that's all good. Sam.
Just on that same conversation, I think that's part of the realignment of responsibilities with doing these subcommittees, that if we'd started these at the start of the term, then those responsibilities would have lined up.
Yeah.
So everyone here, I agree, that would have been nice for everyone here to have known me and been invited to that stuff. So we'll look to make sure that alignment happens in future. And I had a question on in your report, just on the Lincoln House and demolition stuff, which was good to report on, I think, because there's a fair bit of conversation about whether we were looking after stuff.
Yep.
And I guess my question was, do we think that level, there's more reuse there than could have been? Is this the sort of expectation that we would have of council projects, that next time a house is needing to be moved off its site, would we expect more than this? Or is this about right? Or have they gone too far in this level of reuse?
Well, I think there's a lot of products in here that probably not mentioned. It's quite a generic scope. So I think if you had an itemized list of everything in the house, because you've got obviously plumbing, roofing materials, because you can resell those for people who want them, or they might go to metal scrap. So there's you know, an extensive list. Carpets, for example, garden groups might take the wall carpets out and
Sorry, Elizabeth, can
reason.
I just speak to what Sam was asking about? So, so they've, from the reply that I received from staff, is the contractors have tried to recycle as much as they could. I've just put a little addition to that, was that unfortunately the secondhand market is saturated at the moment. So to actually, this is the issues, more to the point, is it needs to have people or someone who's wanting to take these things to then be able to be recycled. It was easy things like the concrete and the steel and stuff like that, but it gets harder when you're actually breaking down a house. And this will be interesting to see when we've got our, when the reuse shop actually gets up and going, whether they'll be able to take, or how much they'll be able to take there. Because that obviously, okay, you can send it there, but that still needs to be moved on as well to somewhere else. That, people need to still be coming and getting that stuff to be able to have it used again. Megan?
Well, so what I understand your question was opinion based. What's people's opinion on this and what level is required? And I'd say if there's a general, from a governance perspective, if we're saying generally we do want things to be recycled and reused, if they can be recycled and reused, then do that. But I would expect that would be the level of our involvement in that.
Yep, exactly. Do you have something else you want to say?
Yeah, I do. So answering what your question was, but also half asking, you're saying, is that list extensive enough? And do we want to extend the list? I think we haven't got enough information around that question. What does the council have a process on this? Do they have a detailed list of what is in the house and is available? Firstly, a really detailed optimized list, or do they just ring a company? Like, I don't know. We don't know the ins and outs of this.
What I was really asking is the scope of effort
Yes.
that we are expecting our contractors to undertake stringent enough, or
But we don't have the detail to know what that looks
Sorry,
like.
Sharon's willing to speak.
I've broken my promise to stay quiet.
So I want to hear what you want to
Yes,
say.
thank you. I think that Megan is absolutely right in terms of this committee is to set that governance requirement, and then operationally, as you can see, the team are already making sure that contractors look for recyclable and reusable. And in terms of each individual house breakup will be different because they'll be in different conditions. So in terms of, Elizabeth, what you're asking is very operational. As a governance group, what I'm hearing you're saying to me as CEO, we want to make sure, Sharon, that when house breakups are taking place, you have you take a reusable. And my response to that is yes, we are. The staff give direction to contractors, and each individual house will be different depending on the state of the house.
So can I finish what I was saying? The question is, how do we do this? Are we doing this in-house, each thing individually, like ringing up a scrapyard, or are we bringing in an external contractor like Musgroves and saying, take what you can out of it? Because
that's not our.
But how can
it's
we
not
make
our-
a decision over that if we don't know?
Yeah,
Because
so-
if we're wanting to say we do more, then I would say 100% this is a field that I have an interest in, and I think you can get a lot out of
So
the house.
just to your point, it's something that I've got a background in as well. So, but it's not for a governance level, and Megan will most likely want to say a governance level to be going into that much detail on what is happening in these cases. We direct the CEO, and she has said what her thoughts are on it, which is in agreement with what we are trying to say here. Is anyone else? Are you wanting to comment? or no?
I see it as quite straightforward. I think that we should give direction that we should reuse what we can
Yeah.
and what is available to market, and fantastic, we now have the reuse shop.
Yeah.
That some of these products could be incorporated in, and I guess that gives enough scope to reuse what we can.
So is there any other comments or questions on my report? I'm quite happy to answer them. No, I'll move my report. A seconder, Sam, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So our next report, so we're having, that's Joe and then coming to the table. or-
Yes, so we've got a series of reports on climate change policy, finalising the sustainability plan and the emissions reduction plan, and perhaps Joe and
Yep.
Andy could come to the table to speak to this, if there's room.
Yep. I'm here too.
Oh, actually, you can sit. No worries.
Would you like to start, Andy? Yeah, I'm sure.
Thanks for receiving the report that Joe and I prepared a couple of weeks ago with Tim's oversight. And yeah, you'll see that that with Joe having started work on the 27th of January, it's been a big learning curve, and so we're I guess getting, Keith left some good notes from his previous role, some good handover notes. So we're you are able to use those notes to understand where we're at, and then in terms of work that's been done in the past, and then what we need to catch up on. And so that we've highlighted the three main things that we see as internal documents that we need to finish. And then obviously there's a lot of work that Joe is being invited to get involved with externally as well. So on like with regional climate change planning and that sort of thing. So Greater Christchurch work, and we just we'll have to look how we manage that as well, because obviously there's a great need for his role. So then with the climate change policy that we've referred to here, we have it in the LTP 2024, but we're aware that it essentially hasn't been reviewed or updated since it was originally released in 2020. So something we'll talk to Tim about in terms of how we, whether we look to review that or not before the next LTP cycle. And it may be more just around some of the context setting and the descriptions in that, rather than the actual guts of the document itself. So that's something we'll just discuss with Tim around how we might be able to, how that relates to the LTP, and then we'll come back to the committee and potentially make suggestions on that and argue in the next meeting. The sustainability plan, Keith's left us a pretty good draft that's it looks pretty solid, and so that's a big part of Joe's role currently, is to review that and with me supporting him to try and understand whether we need to make changes to that or not. But I guess one thing that comes up with it is, and I think thinking back to the cell and biodiversity strategy, is that ultimately we did a lot of context setting in the strategy, and then we came down to goals, targets and actions where we think we can get things done on the ground and create some actions and some momentum. And so we would suggest that that we think arguably an action plan could be attached or part of that sustainability plan as well. And I guess already Joe, as a example, Joe can already see, potentially where we can be doing some things at council around energy reduction and energy gains, things like solar panels and that sort of thing. Whether it's also the possible changes to our fleet, with introducing electric cars or electric chargers and that sort of thing. So we think that's that it would be ideal if we had an action plan on that, and that ideally that's something we would like to, if possible, we would like to workshop with the committee, come up with some thoughts around what the actions might look like, and then come back to you guys and workshop that with you. So you've got able to have good input into that. Now the third big piece of work at the moment is the emissions reduction plan, which is again like the sustainability plan. It's largely an internal document to direct how council will move forward in the future with our own emissions reduction. And again, we've got a really solid document to work with. It does have a set of actions at the end of it, or implementation and action plan at the end of it. So we think that needs reviewing, and we noticed that a lot of it is more, there's not a lot of specific implementation so much as making sure there's policies in place, or reviewing other policies in council to make sure that they're consistent, or look at how we, what our expectation, what our policies might be, for instance, around our new builds and and how we do them around keeping emissions reductions in mind. So the proposed implementation plan that's in there at the moment, maybe it just needs a bit more brushing up, and we need to understand, probably from the committee especially, is what is our, do we have a intention where we want to see some more specifics around actual implementation of what's going to be done on the ground as well. So I think that's the guts of it. There's also in this report, Joe's also detailed, put a bit of detail under additional work in the proposal section around, just given a bit of some bullet points there around additional work that he could be looking into in the next little while, just to give some clarification around where he might be going. Thank you.
You want to speak to the residents and business climate change survey?
Yes. Yep. So I think that it was a really helpful survey that Keith had carried out last year just before he left, and I think what stood out for me in it is that our community are concerned about climate change. That comes through quite strongly in there. They believe that they are also seeing changes in the climate already, and that comes through. It suggests that also they see it as they feel like it's more of a council responsibility, more so potentially than a personal responsibility to institute changes or drive changes. And I also note that for instance, with around public transport, that there's potentially a reluctance to use public transport, at least in how it is at the moment, rather than maybe what we might design it into in the future anyway, or what offerings might be made available to our community in the future. So, but I think ultimately it's a real supporting document for what we think we might need to do going forward, that our community has concerns about it and want to see us taking actions. And I guess a note that that in the next we've noted it in here, but in the next LTP cycle, we're planning for adaptation plan and a mitigation plan to be written. And I think that's where we'll really be getting down into arguably addressing, how we might protect our community and protect our community assets in the future as well. And I guess it also, what we see is what we referred to in here with Joe's work is, largely internal. It's finishing our own plans about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But we also see going forward as definitely there's potential for a lot of outreach with our community, whether it's with the likes of LET as in the future, but also with our businesses and working with them and supporting them to make changes as well where they want to. So yeah, there's plenty of work to be done.
Has anyone got any questions? Oh, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how often you receive stats passed on from ECAN regarding the growing trends for the bus use, and which particular runs are growing or declining in popularity. I'm noticing personally, I'm seeing a lot more youth using the buses from Lincoln. So yeah, just interested if there's an update on that and how often you guys are getting those stats.
So we'll report back to you on that, Elizabeth, and we can approach ECAN about that. And I guess what it suggests is, and that would be really useful information to have for us to understand that. And I guess what it suggests, what it sort of highlights on a higher level is, there's a lot of information out there in terms of data that's being recorded, including, for instance, like our energy use at council and how we might, our electricity use, for instance. So, one of the things that Joe's wanting to do is, and we'll be doing is sort of corralling a lot of that information so that we're able to use it as effective reporting tools as well. So yeah, because we're a lot, obviously there's with use of IT, there's a lot more greater ability to collate this information easily. So, yeah, so we can we'll look into that and come back to you.
This is Andrew Maisie would most likely have that information from ECAN. And just as an aside from that, that the bus ECAN has been looking at, there's just been a thing in the press today about the buses with ECAN. Council's proposing to return to a 2 or 3 zone fare structure, making it more expensive to cross the Selwyn or Makariri district boundary by bus. Council is also proposing a Darfield to Wollaston bus trial funded through a local targeted rate. And then they also, and this speaks to the 85 bus, well, no, 87 from Lincoln, but it's 85 from Rolleston. They were told at a briefing on February 5th that the bus operators need to account for the cost of dead running. So for those buses, they're actually coming one way with just the driver and then picking up and going. So I had already, when I was looking through the stuff for this meeting today, the question that I would ask, because it's interesting, saw the stats that a third of employees living in Christchurch. So whether it's possible to talk with ECAN on whether they can do the reverse route and whether that will work for our staff, and whether that's actually something that we could look at and ask as a staff survey or something. I don't know, to find out who could take that route. I mean, for ECAN, the cost of it, they just, for the distance, they're still paying for that. Time wise, there'll be extra time because they'll have to go to the different stops, and I'm not sure how long that takes in town, but that will obviously depend on how the turnaround on the buses to go on different routes. But I think it's something that's worth looking at with that many staff that are in town. I don't know, something.
If I could comment.
Yeah.
Andrew Mason does a lot of work with PT. It might be that we get him to the
Yeah.
table to talk about. I know he's finding it challenging with the cut in government funding for
Yeah.
PT, but he's actively working in that space. So rather than us just relaying the message, I think might get him to come
Yep.
and speak about what he's doing in the public transport space on behalf of Selwyn. Good idea.
Megan?
So I have a few questions and it's all about setting, like understanding how it all fits together and what
very
goes
good.
where.
Yep.
And I now have an additional question about the conversation we've just had about bus and public transport. But when I looked at this paper, and it was a really good paper, and it was really interesting to see how where our emissions are, our biggest, emission points. But understanding context, so we have the climate change policy, and then we have these two plans, and these two plans, am I right in saying these two plans give effect to the policy, or is there a strategy?
They should give effect to the policy.
To the policy, okay, that's really helpful. And then when we're talking about an adaptation and mitigation plan, is that slightly different than the action list that you talked about, or is that essentially the same thing?
I think we'll be able to answer you in more detail in future meetings on that, Megan, but I think that the expectation with the adaptation and the mitigation plan would be, for instance, looking at what are our key assets across the district and what risk are they exposed to with climate change in the future, and how do we expect to mitigate that?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of discussions to be had with that around, for instance, roading and water infrastructure and that sort of thing, and basic township infrastructure. And then, but also, looking at, I guess, how that also ties in on a regional level and what's been done with other districts as well. So yeah, I think that plan itself will be a lot broader and will arguably focus not just on our, may well focus not just on our own assets, but other vital assets in our community, in our district.
That's really helpful to understand, because in the sustainability plan will have an action list that might not be about mitigation, and
Yes.
and then the emissions reduction plan might be part of climate change adaptation and mitigation, but it might have its own action plan as well.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I believe it will be.
There'll be a lot of crossovers, but I guess the adaptation and mitigation plan is very much outward looking in terms of out into our community, out into our district, whereas our own emissions plan is primarily focused on what can council do to drive down our emissions with our own, like with our fleets of cars, our rubbish trucks, potentially with cord as well. So that's how we actually manage our own council emissions.
That's really helpful, because then it takes us right back to where we started from, which is talking about if we're going to say to contractors that we want to reuse and recycle, then that fits straight into the sustainability plan. And because I'm always trying to pick, well, as a governor, you're really only seeing the top 5% of what's really going on. And so you've got to really trust these documents are right to give the right level of direction. And so then the next question I had then is trying to fit it all in, and it's about public transport. Understand that public transport is, will have an impact on like our emissions reduction plan, but my understanding about like the routes and how we're going to actually submit and, look for better public transport for our community is going to be under the Housing and Urban Development Subcommittee. So is what I had thought.
No, I know, there's
But
that whole.
where's the
yeah.
crossover here? Is where I'm trying to figure
No,
out.
and this is where we need to be working that out, and this is like Sam has said, because there are, particularly between this committee and Sophie's committee, there are quite a lot of crossovers. So we just got to work through that, and whether we join together on some things, and we've already talked about that on accessibility stuff, like working together, the two committees working together. That's something I was going to bring up. We just talked about with the meeting that we had yesterday with the chairs, so. Very good questions though, Megan, thank you. You've finished.
The comment
Brilliant.
to their response. was
Yeah.
very well. So, the chairs of the subcommittees and I met yesterday, and one of the discussions was exactly that, how we have a workshop before the next meeting.
Mm.
Because there were a couple of other things, as Nicole raised, that Sophie's committee and this committee have in common. And so until we can actually probably understand them a little bit better and then figure out, will they still sit in both committees or will they sit with one, and how do we share them? So expect another diary and invite before the next committee meeting.
Very good.
My question was around, I guess, so the resolution in here states that we're finalising the sustainability plan or supporting work to finalise that. So, I guess I was interested to hear from Joe, especially being a fresh set of eyes on these plans. Are there any changes that you see benefiting
I think,
us?
yeah, I think the sustainability plan, and Andy, jump in if I'm sort of misinterpreting anything here, but the sustainability plan kind of encompasses everything that the council are already doing. So there's the Future Selwyn, the biodiversity strategy, some of the transport. I do have a list here. Yeah, there's a lot of a kind of a very, very wide reach of what the council are doing. So there's not too much. I'd say that's at some stage I need to go more through the goals, targets and actions to see, look, this is what we're doing. What are we going to do from here? With the emissions reduction plan, I'd say that kind of is a little bit more where my strengths lie, about actually assessing data and having some outcomes as to what can be done, not just with the vehicle fleet. If there's redundant vehicles, look at the vehicle replacement policy. I utilized recently, just last week, I spent a day looking through eBench, which is a software we use to monitor all emissions and energy from the council, not just the headquarters, but everywhere. And there were already a few inefficiencies that were identified. So I'd like to really push forward some outcomes, I guess, not just a plan of saying this is what everything is, but some way, whether that would be in the adaptation plan or a side plan, to kind of give maybe quarterly updates on what we're doing to show that things are moving along, rather than just updating plans, releasing plans.
Yeah.
I hope that answered.
Yeah,
somewhat.
it does help, because I just note with the sustainability report or plan that, there's things that need to be updated, like it's just things around, we're working towards a one water strategy where
Yeah.
council's adopted these
Yeah.
things. So there's a lot to be updated. So I was just wanting to clarify in the resolution around.
Yeah.
I'd love to see those reviewed by
Yeah.
you with a fresh set of eyes,
Yeah.
and support having a workshop on what actions look like from those.
So rather than just finalising, review and finalise sustainability plan perhaps in the resolution.
And we'll also look to nail down some timelines about when we think that the two plans can be finalised as well. It's something we'll talk with him about, and the new manager that will be coming into our department as well, who'll be working with on this. So, but also bring that to the committee as well.
And sorry, yeah, oh no, you're right.
I'm just more wondering what sort of time frame that we're talking about, just conscious of. So our next meeting is May, which is quite a way off. So I would like to see sort of some stuff in the meantime, but it really relies on you guys as to, what is possible and what's not, to get these things moving along.
Yeah, I might comment.
Yeah.
Perhaps as a suggestion, we could work up some indicative timelines and maybe even circulate them
Yeah.
Prior to the next meeting to get some feedback.
Yeah.
Because to wait till May until we actually get a timeline is losing a couple of months.
Yeah.
So we'll work up something and then get that
No, that would be great.
circulated to the
Yeah.
committee and get some feedback, so we can actually get some progress and runs on the board by next May. Sure.
Yeah, because we want to progress these, but we want to make sure that it's done properly and done well. Yeah. So having that sort of balance.
Yeah, I guess with what you mentioned earlier as well about with, you know, making sure it's updated, the sustainability plan is updated regarding, for instance, where the direction that water is going. And it probably also highlights that, you know, in the future with these sort of plans that arguably, you know, could be sitting on the would be sitting on the internet and could easily be updated over time. It's almost like we don't necessarily have to have a review period in 10 years' time that we review it and update it, that arguably that's available to us all the time, where we can, you know, change links or add in new links and that sort of thing. So the more iterative plans, I presume that's the direction we want to head in.
It's, and like just the last one, you know, when you talked about the residents survey, and like, yeah, I find it really interesting that people say that it's councils that should implement changes and whatnot. And I just wonder sometimes whether people understand that there is cost associated for them anyway in that with council implementing changes. So that's always the hard thing, is that everyone always wants council to do everything, but there's still costs associated with that. And I think the emission reductions plan, like, you know, sort of the budget that's in there, sort of scopes a bit of that as well. So when looking at the actions that we're going to take out of these plans, that actually the cost falls on our ratepayer. It's not necessarily just a cost held by our organisation, because it is funded by the ratepayer.
Like I say, I think there is a piece around communication with their community. So we need to keep further down some sort of communication plan about what we're actually doing, and some of the plans we're putting together. I think would be, so we could work with our community engagement people about how we might achieve that. There might be some existing channels we can just tap into.
And luckily, some of the emissions reduction work actually reduces budget reduction or cost reductions as well,
yeah.
which is thankfully. So that's potentially, you know, supports where we think we should be going with this.
Can I tag on to what you were saying, Tim? Can aspects of the strategy move into significance of high to allow for the community submission engagement process? Because something like adaptation, once the government's released that information, and you were to tell me when that will probably happen on the adaptation bill. But once we get that information and it's more structured, it would be really interesting to know what we do with that and how we implement it. But I really feel that would obviously be something that would be categorized as high to the community. So if, as we see, this is overall in strategy, what I'm saying is you've got adaptation in here, but does that then able to come out later as a separate policy so that it can be utilised with the community that way?
I think it's up to this committee to decide what level of consultation they want to undertake with the community. I mean, there's a formal legal trigger in terms of significance, but doesn't mean we can't go for a fuller consultation process if it's not deemed to be of significance.
So at the moment, this is significance low, but you've got some things in there that I would say are very high, significance high to the community. So, but this is an overarching strategy. So what I'm saying is later when we have more specific stuff, do we then take those aspects out as a separate policy and then go back to the community for?
I think this is just, I think we just need to look at what we're doing at the moment and then.
Well, I need to understand
Well,
this
we-
decision
yeah.
we're making.
Right. Yeah, just to add that I think that when we looked at those affected, we have noted that when we look to do the adaptation mitigation plan, that significance might be
Okay.
medium to high, and that we would need to do consultation accordingly.
Okay.
And also, as Tim says, with under your direction. But I guess it also, in the meantime, you know, within the future Selwyn work as well, that our strategy team are going out to our communities and talking to them about future Selwyn work and what our communities are wanting in the future, and climate change. Some feedback about climate change is also part of that. So
I think
so that's
Lydia raised a really good point. We're seeing them a little bit not realizing the cost, and because it's coming out as sort of, you know, what would you like rather than this is what it will cost you. They're not really being able to make a really fully informed decision. They're making kind of a very low informed decision on the direction they want to go and what they want. And the questions are quite generic. rather than quite specific to the actions. And so I do feel that that's where we could end up having some issues further down the track once we start implementation.
But there, yeah, with our significance policy, it will actually come out of when we need to consult and such like that. So this is a future thing that we're talking about, future scenario, whereas we're just at the moment actually focused just on these policies. Phil, you want
Yeah.
to say something?
Thank you. I think picking up on what Megan was saying about action plans forming out of each of the particular plans is great. In the sustainability plan, you talk about, and the goals, you talk about being bold, which is great. And I think it's great. And I just wanted to draw attention to this particular page, is page 6 of your document. That's the page that she's got the really nicely, clearly got really bold, ambitious things, and shows how they can be done. And I want to move forward to the emissions reduction plan on page 55 in Diligent. You have got a list of things, 30% gross reduction in scope 1 and 2 emissions to 2030. You know the list that I'm talking about. Are they achievable? And are they bold enough? So you're both, I'm asking both ends. Are we overstating it, and can we state more? Because I think that, yeah, it's good to have actual numbers. So, yeah. And then I got, and so once you answer that question there, then have you thought of any way, and this is not about consultation, how we can model that to our business community? So you talk about the business, the last document in the pack. It's about, yeah. So.
I think it's important that we are able to model to our business community and how we and align some communications around that. So that's the answer to your second question, and that's something we should look to do in the future, especially as we get into more outreach on climate change and emissions and that sort of thing. Yeah, Joseph, do you?
And if
first question?
around whether or not the targets are bold enough, or if they can actually be met. There's a few factors that would go into that, whether or not changes can get implemented, how soon, and how well they're met. They're kind of at this stage, to my understanding, these are based off of kind of the UN goals along with wider New Zealand and Canterbury based goals. So we'll have to look into that a bit further. I'll have to do some more analysis whether or not they're achievable, but I would say I believe so.
I guess draw that out a wee bit further. How have we been doing so far? That would be the question that I'd be asking. No, you won't have the answers for those, but there'd be something that I would be interested to know. We're looking for goals of 50% reductions by 2036. That's only, 11 years away.
Yeah.
So
how we're doing so far is I've basically just had a quick look. I've spent a couple of days looking through our historical data, and with a growing region, it's obviously a challenge there to try and keep emissions and energy down when we're growing the region quite significantly. But there has been some changes recently. There were all of the street lights, I believe, changed to LEDs, and that finished in October. And you can see that was even more than a 50% cost and energy reduction for a change like that. There's the sports hall, I believe, is it sports hall that's going under all of the sports grounds changing to LEDs. So.
Oh, that's great. So the question is, I guess, as a barometer, it's we've set the targets. We need to watch the barometer moving down. That's the big challenge. Is it set at the right mark? Yes, you're right about that. I recognise with the UN marks as well. But I guess as we go forward, that's the stuff that we'll be looking at.
That's something I'd like to do, is to actually quantify what we do, so it can come and you can actually see measured from whether it's whoever it is that's provides us all of our data. We can measure it and all see what's actually happening, whether we are increasing or lowering like we hope to.
And really interested to see how we can influence the business. So thank you for your answers.
Okay. Thanks.
Same.
I support Elizabeth and her comments around the significance of this to the community. I was really interested in that business climate change survey, and it's the second highest priority for the community after a road condition. Excuse me, and that shouldn't really surprise us. But it's not a cool thing to talk about at the moment, but it's still really high on people's
Mhm.
thoughts about what we should be doing. And I feel like as we talk to our community about what we're doing, there's a big comms piece, I think, Tim, in this. And I think the comms team have been doing some really good stuff recently on graphics, showing just stuff that council's up to that you can just see rather than having to read releases on. But if we can say we heard from you, this stuff's important, and this is what we're doing about it, and show that in small graphics, and multiple different types of graphics, you know, over a month, then it just starts to, I don't know, share what's actually going on, because I think a lot of the stuff that we're already doing, we're not very good at talking about. And also reflecting that we do hear communities' voices into this, and that that final climate change survey paper really, I felt quite good about it. I said, oh, this stuff still does matter to people, and we've been focused as a council for a while, and it's good to know that community is too. So yes, I'm interested how you're working with the comms team, or is there any plans currently on with their work?
I'll have to check with the comms team, but if there isn't, there should be. So we'll put, make a report back to the main meeting about some sort of comms plan. Cool, good idea.
Ravina is here from the comms
Oh,
team, so she'll be
so
noting the conversations.
We are looking to update the sustainability portal to give, is that just council, or will the community be able to see that
That's
as
an
well?
internal
That's
Yeah,
internal.
that's-
portal for our staff as well.
Yeah.
But, and it would be nice to think, including within our own our internal you know, our front-facing page that we look at when we're working, is also to we could have real-time reporting on energy usage and that sort of thing as well. So so that staff can be understanding about what's going on, what sort of changes have been made, but how those changes might be impacting.
switch the light off and leave the office.
Oh, I feel like that should be available. Like I was looking at an app for solar panels on a roof at home, and it tells me. And last night Liz and I were looking at it. You know, it tells us the number of kilograms of CO2 saved, the number of equivalent trees planted, and it's just like that stuff should just be available to anyone in our community that wants to see what council's done in that space, and should be obvious and transparent about it. And there'll be other metrics as well that are interesting, but those two,
Yeah.
cool.
That's very visual too, for us to imagine that. The paper, there's no trees.
I think it also is a little bit related to what you're saying, Phil, as well, is that when we, some of these things like with the reduction in lighting usage or the change to LED, that's, I guess, to a certain degree, some of the actions that have been taken might be almost ad hoc, for want of a better word. But hopefully with Joe here and with how we work on this, with the committee and going forward, is that then everything's just pushing in the same direction. So there's less ad hoc, and we're really identifying key options to do going forward that will make a difference.
Very good. Any other comments? Anyone's got any questions?
I was just really keen if Keith had looked into the solar panels because it's been talked about on and off for ages, whether he's done anything on that space and left that for you for council buildings.
I didn't, not that I found one email strings from Ben actually that forwarded it to me, but not much. However, I did just last week do a assessment. I've done sort of solar assessments in the past. So I put together a draft report actually around focusing on the headquarters of solar potential, and it's quite interchangeable. So I don't have it right now to show everyone, but you can see like our current usage first once we've implemented solar based on area, if it was one roof with this amount of meters squared or all of it, to show quite an interactive display of how much we could reduce our load. But that's something I'd like to focus on. I know that the sports centre has solar panels, the waste centre has solar panels, and I believe the sports centre has.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Doesn't it, Sam? Sam and I were on the committee for that. Yeah. But that's pretty much just for running the sports centre as well. There's not an excess to put it to the grid or anything like that.
That's something, there's a few options there, whether there was funding to actually purchase the panels, which I know would be quite expensive for a large site like this, or providers can actually at zero cost, if just emission reduction and or reduction of grid reliance is the key outcome, you essentially loan the panels and then pay the provider a fixed cost. Just something else I would think I'd want to look into is the amount we pay per kilowatt hour anyway. Well, yeah, Meridian, I know, I think Lincoln, I might be wrong here, but Lincoln University used Meridian, I believe. I think that I could be wrong with that, but and I believe that they don't own a certain section of their panels. They probably do. They've got some other plans. Yeah, but there's options there. It's definitely something I'd like to look into if that's something that everyone agrees on.
I think it would be great to do the cost benefit analysis for both owning and not owning, because
Definitely.
my panels it was paid off in 15 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And then storage is an option as well over weekends. If we're not, there might be storage options as well to reduce peak loads, and when we get some e-vehicle chargers as well, we might be able to supplement. I know a lot of the energy, or really all of the energy we get in the South Island is from hydro, but to reduce grid reliance is always a good option. Sort of move forwards from there where we can.
Very good. Thank you.
Just one more thing, it's around the reporting, and it's great having all these reports, but it feels like we've bundled them together, and we haven't sort of gone into each report really. We've sort of picked our 2 or 3 top questions across all of them. So just in future, thinking, Tim, how we can have, we've got time to consider each of them, and maybe if they were just reported separately.
Yeah, Nicole did bring that. Cool. No.
And obviously you guys had some changes that you're wanting to make to these anyway, which is being brought back to us. So yeah, it's not a big deal in this meeting, but definitely, thank you, Sam, it's going to be going forward to make sure that we are over these policies and plans.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. So no other questions on that. So has anyone got any general business that they want to bring?
Some resolutions.
Oh. Completely forgot about. Was there in the end where we're looking to change how that was worded? It was brought up at the beginning.
Suggest
Yes.
finalising, review and review and finalise. So it's a review features in there was the suggestion. We do anyway. Yeah.
Review and finalise. So that's. I'm just wondering. So when it comes, because I have to come back to us again, won't it? Yeah. So then we have the final document is what will come to us. Yes. For having it. Okay. Cool. So someone want to move?
Quick question. Sorry. Apologies.
Yep.
Just a process thing. Once whatever the resolution here means that we'll go back to council saying that this group has supported it, and the council has the final write-off.
I'm sure whether
we don't have to go to authority to it.
No, that's a question whether we should want to have that or not. I don't know, Sam, you got a view on that?
At the moment, I think that's going to come back to this committee for sign off.
And then before going on,
so we've got one more iteration back here.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
before that
but
happen.
yes, exactly what I was getting at. Do we want to have a delegated authority to actually sign off on these things? Is it something we should be? I guess I'm jumping the gun a wee bit. Sorry, Nicole. No.
Yeah, I would think that these sort of plans, which are council plans, need to go to council to be approved. Yeah, because they are policies and that sort of thing. I didn't specifically ask that, but that was the reason, my thinking behind it. Yeah. And that's the review with the changes to it. A seconder. Thanks, Lydia. All those in favour? Aye. Against? No, so that is carried. General business. Again. So nobody's got any general business. Very good. So our closing karakia. Everyone, una here, tapo, kia wātea, hai, kia wātea. Go. Thank you. Our meeting is finished.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, you two.
Thanks. Well, as I had hoped, because we're generating.
Yeah.
That's if they begin another 100,
Right. I,
Thanks, Tim.
it's waste, yeah. Cheers, Tim.
I'd like to, maybe for.
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah.